It's great to be here. Thank you very much. I am going to talk today about, a hot topic, I think, for a lot of us, much bandied about word, which is innovation. And what I want to do is, and this is one of my favorite topics, because one of the things that happens is it's a fun word to say, and it energizes a lot of us, right? We want to be innovators. We want to be thought of as doing innovation. But the fact of the matter is the doing of innovation actually is hard and often unattended to, right? So just having an innovative idea doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing innovative work or doing the right work and doing the work the right way. So I want to talk a bit about what it is we've been learning and how we're approaching digital innovation. I should say that I lead a team at Microsoft that's a startup business inside of Microsoft. If you've been watching the news, you know there's a few changes going on at Microsoft these days. Quite a different place. And so what we're trying to do is really think about how can we be systematic and how can we be moving in a new direction that will allow us to actually work toward the kinds of things that we think people truly want. So what I'd like to do is spend the lion's share of the time on the doing of innovation and how our team is approaching it, and maybe share some best practices and some ideas about that. But before I do that, I wanted to actually make a point about engaging executive stakeholders. And I hope this is valuable to you because it's certainly, through the scars that we have and some of the things that we've learned, an incredibly important point. Even if, and I'm going to talk a bit about some best practices and some rules of the road in innovating that we might do as marketers, that we might do as technologists, even if we do that really, really well, one of the things that often happens is that we're innovating in a way that is in different time frames, and often we don't have the right executive and stakeholder conversations. And one of the frameworks that I want to leave, I won't go into this in any detail, but that we found incredibly helpful is something we call horizons. Because what often happens is that if we're doing things that we believe are going to be material in the 3 to 5 year time frame, the doing of those things has different metrics, different leadership, different talent, different levels of investment, right? It's an option on the future. It shouldn't be thought of in the same way that the business of today is thought about and managed. And inevitably, companies apply the logic and the management models for what rings the cash register in the current fiscal year to those things that are actually out in the future. And we, of course, know that this is a really bad thing. So having a framework that says, I'm doing these things that have materiality out in the future, and therefore I'm taking a different approach. I need to be managing them accordingly. And the second time frame, the second horizon, turns out to be the trickiest one of all. Because those things way out in the future are intriguing and often creative and inspiring, but it's making those significant next-generation growth businesses material that is the really tricky bit. And so we found allocating investment and management attention, and let me just pause on that last one, management attention, against these three horizons becomes incredibly important. So that we're not spending 100% or 90% of our energy in Horizon 1 and maybe sort of doing 9% in Horizon 3 and 1% in Horizon 2 is terrible. But really beginning to think 60% Horizon 1, 30% or 10%, whatever the allocation is, and then being very deliberate in how you manage this. Because if you don't, what you'll find is those really interesting ideas get killed too soon in Horizon 3, and those growth businesses never become material in Horizon 2. So we've actually put this in place as a way of having executive-level conversations and applying some of the discipline of the venture world to how we do innovation in a large company. And I will just call this out in case anybody really wants to get into this. I recommend this book from a good friend of mine and former partner on how to actually put that in practice. Okay, so that's the context for board level and executive discussions about how do we make what we're doing material. Let's dig in a little bit about how we approach innovation at Microsoft. And I have to actually just set this up very briefly and say, look, we think as a technology company, I often get asked the question, what comes next? And if we think about the waves of technology, right? We in the technology business love technology, right? Because that creates new categories, it creates new opportunities for wealth creation. And if we look back at the sort of internet, if we go from the mid-90s to the present, we've had a series of shifts that have been, I'll say, technology-driven. And if we get I have to get the question, what's the next big shift? You know, what's the next thing going to be all about? Is it going to be social? Is it going to be mobile? Is it going to be the Internet of Things? What's it going to be? And we have a very strong view that the next big thing is actually all about people, not about technology. In other words, the one thing that I can say with certainty about technology change is there will be new technology. There will be more gizmos. We will have more phablets and tablets and phones. That is a certainty. We will have more media. We will have media interacting in interesting ways across channels. If we focus on the media, if we focus on the technology, we'll miss the point. And we'll miss the big opportunity, and it's combinatorially too complex, right? Because there's always going to be more of these things. The unifying lens that we like to apply, and we think the future is all about, is what we say PeopleCentricity. Giving people more of what they want and less of what they don't. And that anchors pretty much everything we do. So then if that's the case, now here's where an approach to digital work and digital innovation really comes into play. Because if you believe in people centricity, then you have to take a strong point of view about what is it that matters to people. And you have to do primary research in unpacking what that happens to be. And what we've learned in the work that we're doing is, first and foremost, instead of swinging for the fences, I'm sorry, I use sports metaphors, going for the home run, right, in innovation, that does generate results occasionally. I mean, Apple did create an iPad and an iPhone, and these were stunning innovations. But for most of us mere mortals, what we want to really be doing is base hits. And so we like to think about how do we gauge and focus our investments by grounding them in fundamental insights. So number one is actually conducting primary research. And we're fortunate to have a phenomenal team that does just that, and I'll talk a bit about some of the frameworks that we've developed. Second is that what we do needs to be co-created, that we have to have some humility about the world that we're in because it's too complex and that we don't have all the best ideas. Other companies, partners, innovators, and consumers themselves have great ideas. We apply a design methodology. As opposed to talking about that, I'll give an example of what that looks like, but the prior presenter actually did, I think, a fabulous job of talking about the power of pictures and stories so that we can make the future vivid. We prototype often, and we have this model we say prototype into existence, so go from an early idea and take it all the way forward into the market. Validate and fail fast. As opposed to talking about this, I'd like to run a video and just give you a sense of what this feels like.
People face a lot of challenges when it comes to buying things that matter to them, and they expect technology to help.
Consumers have become much smarter and much more digitally savvy. They expect digital to wrap around their lives.
So how do you give them what they really want? Ask them? Sure. But that'll only give you part of the picture. So we began investigating the why behind the what.
Consumer First is a really groundbreaking change in the way we're doing things. It's about rolling up our sleeves and spending time with consumers and really trying to understand what we can do to address their needs and make their lives better.
First, we invited people into conversations with our designers in the US and Europe. We asked them to tell us their frustrations around purchase decisions, big and small.
I'm tired of getting played and going to that dealership and just having them waste my time.
Shopping for skincare is so trial and error based. It would definitely be nice if it were easier.
I really don't like when searching for car forum apps and finding information that's unreliable.
The drive me crazy part is we live in a world of constant marketing, and so it gets really confusing, especially when it comes to something very personal to me, and that's my face.
We encourage them to let their imaginations run wild with ideas that would help solve problems in and around their shopping experiences. Turns out, they want technology that
knows my hair and knows what products are going to be good for my hair and where and when I can get those at the best price.
Minimize the amount of information that's misleading and find information for me that was actually helpful.
That can cut through all that stuff and save me time.
As a personal beauty consultant for me.
Anything that will help me out buying a car or research on buying a new car, I'll use it.
The best part of the whole experience was getting into groups.
To create new things, to have new ideas. It was brilliant.
We gave them time and space to dream up solutions with our designers.
Working with the Microsoft designer was spontaneous.
They come up with things that I hadn't thought about before.
I had envisioned something like that, but he made it come to life.
Getting designers into the room with consumers lets us include the consumer in the solutions that we're imagining, so we know when we deliver, we're delivering the right thing for them.
Inspired, we began transforming some of these collaborative ideas into reality.
It's an opportunity for us to take those ideas now and make something happen.
Ultimately, marketers want to engage more deeply and in a more relevant and timely way.
That's why we created our uniquely human, consumer-first approach for solutions that bring marketers and consumers closer together.
Once we understand the consumer's needs and the brand's objectives, we just have such a fantastic array of technology available to us to think about how we solve that problem in a way that nobody else can.
Okay, and so just to give a sense, there's plenty of companies out there, and I know many of you are doing this, so it's not about just what we're doing, but to actually start with a person and prototype early and often. And I just want to give a couple quick points because I'm running out of time, that all this is grounded on fundamental frameworks and how people behave. You've heard some of my other colleagues, Natasha and others, speak about these frameworks in the past, and you'll hear more of them in the future. But we use these, think about using these insights as bumpers, as guideposts for creating experiences. It gives us a space to hunt. And then those early ideas that start off in the studio model on stickies with people and a lot of energy ultimately get crafted into these kinds of day in the life of scenarios, right? So that we actually follow the person through their life and begin to reveal what needs to show up in technology, what needs to show up in media, so that we're serving that person in their decision journey in the way that makes the most sense on the right device at the right time. This, I think, was very nicely stated by the prior presenter, but it's our version of saying, hey, visuals matter. People love stories and big animal pictures. Use those to actually create the context and drive the kinds of innovation forward that make sense. So I'm going to click through this. And if possible, let me see if I can advance the slide. I just want to actually go to the summary here, since we're out of time. Maybe we can just pull that slide up. Again, so we're showing this experience that we created actually for the traveler. Of course, you can see this from, there's a very CES look to that. But if we go to the key takeaways, I just want to leave a few points. In order to win at digital innovation, there's actually several kinds of conversations that need to take place, and managing those carefully was something I started talking about at the beginning. The executive level conversation is incredibly important, as well as the interactions that you have across interdiscipline teams. For marketers, it's really about what we like to say whole-brained experiences. I like to say left brain meets your right brain, using insights to form experiences. For technologists, it's understanding that the person's at the center, and so all of the technologies need to wrap around like an information fabric to make those experiences more about what people want and giving them more of what they want and less of what they don't. For the managers out there, I would say understand that the future is happening pretty quickly. So mobilizing for this and doing this rapid test and learn, design-led, insight-driven approach. And this model of base hits not swinging for the fences, I think, is a good model for success. And finally, understanding that in the executive level conversations, as you're doing this digital work, there is broader disruption going on, and framing that disruption and what it can mean at the executive level, independent of how it is you're doing your work on a day-to-day basis. Thank you very much.